Do you know anyone that has people in their life that do not do things the way they wish they would be done? Of course you do. Most people don't even do things always the way they wished things were done. It's an amazing thing. Why not? Well, maybe it's an urge, maybe it's a desire, maybe it's confusion, social pressure. The Torah has a word for all of these things. You ready for this? They are called our enemies. Enemies are things that get in the way of us being the kind of people we really wish we were. And in Parshas Kiseitse, there are more commandments than any other parsha, and there are some magnificent strategies on how to deal with life's enemies. My name is Rabbi Wyne. I'm one of the rabbis at Inspiring Jews. Stick with me for a few moments, and I'll go through some of the amazing strategies that will help you live your best life. Okay, so let's understand this idea of the enemies for a second. The Torah begins in this week's parsha saying, when you will go to war against your enemies, the Lord your God will deliver them into your hand. So, of course, the context of the discussion in the Torah is you're going to war, to the battlefield. But the rabbis expand that and say that really it's not only about the battlefield, but we're also talking about when every human being goes against the most important enemies in their life, which might be things that are a product of their Yetzer Hara, their evil inclination. And as we were saying, this might take the form of an urge, a desire, a confusion, social pressure that's going on. How do you deal with all these, with life's pressures that the Torah straight up calls the enemies? And again, think of it in terms of, do I want to live with my higher self or my lower self? Every one of us has a body and a soul. The soul wants to be great. It wants to accomplish. It wants to strive and connect with the Almighty, live a meaningful life. Our body wants to go to sleep. That's what it wants to do. It's done. Not necessarily, the Yetzer Hara does not necessarily take the form of something that's bad or evil. Oh, it's not exactly like, I got the angel on this shoulder, I got the devil on that shoulder, and they're fighting. It's not exactly like that. But think of it in terms of, sometimes I have a desire, an urge, or a social pressure or a discussion that if I follow it straight, it's going to lead me not where I want to go. So the first strategy in dealing with the Yetzer Hara, in terms of living with our highest self, is know where you want to go. Know the kind of person you are. You are one of God's firstborn, chosen people, a person who's created in the image of God, who can accomplish magnificent things, greater than you can even imagine, and know where you want to go. And as one philosopher said, if you don't know where you want to go, you're probably not going to get there. Then one of the first things in the Torah and Judaism is a person needs to know what they're living for. We have to know what's really important in our lives, our values. See, if we don't know what our values are, if we're not really clear on our perception of the kind of person I want to be, not just some nebulous idea of, I'm a good guy, I never really hurt anybody, I want to be productive. No, but real, hone it in, specific. What does it mean to be a kind person? What does it mean to be a generous person? How often are you generous, and how often are you holding back? What does it mean to be a person that is truly concerned with taking care of their health? Would I really overeat on Shabbat if I was concerned with my health? Or maybe I would learn to moderate what I put in my mouth. In other words, when a person stops and they identify all the areas of their life and their values, then they know where they want to go. And then you know what they know? They know their enemies. Then they can recognize the Yetzer Hara. You can't fight against something that you don't know what it is. If you don't know what your enemy is, what are you fighting against? So the first thing is know who you want to be. Know who you are. Know what your potential is as a soul. And know who you want to be. Know those first 5 real values, and what it would take, what your life would look like if you were really living with those values and taking them seriously. That's the first thing. The next strategy that's straight up here, like coming busting out of the gates, is know that when you're fighting, when you go to war against those enemies, The Lord your God will help you and you will be successful. Now, this is a beautiful point. First of all, you need to realize every person that has ever gone into a 12-step program like Alcoholics Anonymous, one of the foundations is that is their higher power, right? It's their connection with God. I know several people who grew up religious, went to top yeshivas, extremely educated, they're rabbis, they're whatever, right? And they never really found God until they recognized they were alcoholics. When they went into a 12-step program, then they said, that's what it means to have a relationship with God. And even though they knew and had great relationships with really holy people, but everyone has a different path. You have to recognize that we need to know that, Lord, if we are willing to put our trust in the Almighty and to rely on God and say, I have a struggle in my life, and God, I know you can help me out with this, then the Almighty's going to help us. And the Torah lays that out straight up. The next strategy is we learn from the situation in the Torah called the Yafas Torah. Yafas Torah is an amazing situation. It's the person goes to war, and we know that war is a brutal place. It's a brutal place. One of the commandments in the Torah this week is the battlefield bathroom. What's the battlefield bathroom? Every Jewish soldier had to carry with them a small shovel in order to cover, their waste product, when they're in the bathroom, or when they're at war. And you say, why in the world? People are dying all over the place and you're fighting for your life. Why would you have to be concerned with, if you go to the bathroom, then you got to take your shovel and cover your waste? Why would that? Because the point is that even a person has got to be dignified. And even in the place that is most undignified, like the battlefield, where there's killing and maiming, even then you have to be dignified. How's that for understanding who you are? When a person goes in and says, this is how I am, I got to be dignified, then you go through to the next level, the next step in your day. And that is the mitzvah of the Yafas Torah. So a person's out there, he's at war, and he's killing people, he's maiming people, and he's covering his waist. So he's a really dignified guy, right? He's like and then he sees a woman, and he's like, oh my gosh, his urges swell up, and now he wants her. So what's the mitzvah? The mitzvah is the soldier's allowed to take her home, let her fingernails grow, shave her head, let her cry for a month, assuming she's never going to see her family again. And afterwards, then he's allowed to fulfill his desires with her. The Torah says, the rabbis explain that God speaks in the language of men. And that if God were to say, listen, you're out there in the battlefield, you got to be dignified. You see someone you're attracted to, your desires are swelling up with everything that's going on. No, don't do it. Shove your desires in a box. Push them away. You know what's going to happen? There might be some people that are very strong and they will do that. But bottom line is most people are going to succumb to their desires. They'll come to their urges. So God says, let me teach you a strategy how to deal with all of your urges, not just this one. But in a case of the battlefield, when your urges are really strong and you're really in a difficult situation, I'm going to teach you how to deal with it. And then you're going to take that principle and apply it to every urge in your life. And even if you're not in the battlefield. So what is the strategy? What is the strategy about this thing? The first one is to go into system 2 thinking. Now, again, it's from the Torah here, but if you have friends that talk about psychology, they'll speak about system 1 thinking and system 2 thinking. System 1 thinking is it's stuff that's fast, spontaneous, it's immediate satisfaction. You just get in there. The idea of that's system 1 thinking, it's impulsive. System 2 thinking is slow, methodical, intentional, deliberate, conscious. The idea of going into system 2 thinking is that we're going to move beyond immediate satisfaction into the world of intentional choice. That's what system 2 thinking does. And so God is saying, pull back from the war, the battlefield. Take the woman. Now, you know what? you'll think about things. It's no longer going to be, I'm no longer reacting to an urge. Rather, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop, I'm going to slow down, I'm going to think about it. I'm going to change my environment. So I'm not on the battlefield. I'm at home. I'm changing what she looks like. She's no longer preened and just proper, ready to go, but rather she's getting a little schmutzy and ugly and her head shaved and all that kind of stuff, and she's crying and she's sad, right? And then after I've pulled back, then I can make the decision. When a person has an urge, they want to go from a situation of system 1 thinking, fast, impulsive, reactive, to system 2 thinking, slow, methodical, conscious, present. We want to pull back that way. When our mind is at work, then that means it can control our body. When our mind, which is attached to our higher self, is at play, then we can say, what are my values? Who do I truly want to be? And then I can make a decision on the urges, which goes to the next aspect about urges and desires, that kind of stuff. We have to recognize, we have to understand what they are. See, there's a lot of myths by urges. One myth is that you stop and you say, it's going to kill me. If I don't do this right now, if I don't yell at that guy, if I don't punch him in the face, if I don't just take this thing, then I'm going to die. You know what? You're not going to die. No, people don't die from urges. You think they're never going to pass. It's like it lasts forever. Urges pass. Eventually, a person, you sleep on a situation, you go for a walk around the block, you distract yourself, you engage in something else. They die down after a little bit. Reacting to urges is like having an itch. So I scratch. Okay, I feel better. The problem is when I do that, then it starts to bleed, then I scar, I get infected, and it's worse. So when we don't react to the urge, we are uncomfortable. But by allowing our minds to take control over here and understanding what an urge is and how to deal with it, then the urge doesn't rule us, but we can learn how to rule the urge. If we fall trap into doing whatever you kind of want as quick as you want, then what happens is you train your brain to be comfortable with doing the wrong thing. And then that's just the way it is. So at the beginning, if a person has an urge, they don't want to get angry, they don't want to get frustrated, they don't want to drink, they don't, whatever it is, right? At the beginning, they don't want to go shopping, they don't want to buy that, right? Whatever it is, at the beginning, it's very uncomfortable. But if a person goes into system 2 thinking, they understand this is just an urge, I'm not going to die from it, I'll just be a little uncomfortable. And then you say it's not so bad to be uncomfortable, right? You gotta come to that fact. Life very often is not comfortable. It's not bad to be uncomfortable. And the discomfort does not last forever. And if I give in to the urge, then the urge will perpetuate itself. And as we say, mitzvah gereris mitzvah, avera gereris avera, that doing a mitzvah, a commandment, a good thing leads to another good thing, but doing a bad thing, a negative thing, that leads to another bad thing. So we don't want to reinforce the bad behavior, so to speak. So when we understand what an urge is and how it's temporary and just there as a test and a challenge, so that when we overcome it, when we rule the urge, which I'll share with you in a moment how to do, when we do that, we actually get rewarded. The Almighty smiles at us. I got to know who I am. I got to know God's going to help me. I got to say, okay, this is an urge over here. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to slow down. I'll think about things. I'm not going to be impulsive over here. When we do that, we get rewarded. So the next step in that is to do something that is as old as Judaism. It's one of the very first tools that God taught Moses. And that is to do a cost-benefit analysis of an urge. Right? That's what it is. It's like it's just a slice of something we will speak about more of in the future, called the cheshbon hanefesh, the accounting of the soul. But basically, you're weighing the cost of an action against its benefit. Generally, it's the long-term cost as opposed to the immediate benefit. And when you stop and you say that, I don't want to pay the price. It's understanding, as the Nobel laureate economist Milton Friedman said, when he stood in front of and explained economics to the Israeli Knesset, he said, economics is put in one phrase. It's all of economics come down to one phrase. There's no such thing as a free lunch. If a person understands there's a cost for everything, and they ask themselves, okay, what's the cost over here? And what's the benefit? Then you can decide whether or not to do this. So you understand, once you ask the cost, the benefit, you're into system 2 thinking. It's no longer an impulsive urge anymore. You see that great handbag, you just have to get it. You need to get that handbag, or who knows what's going to happen, right? If you say, okay, how much is the cost? What's the benefit? What would I use the money for? How is my husband going to respond, right? When you go through that whole thing, maybe I can't, next time I'll do it. You play, that's the office tour. You say, in a month I'll get it. In a month from now I'm coming through the airport, I'll pick it up then, right? That's how you do it. All right, and then the last thing, really dealing not so much with urges, but with social pressure. Because again, when we're talking about our Yetzer Hara, our evil inclination, it's triggered in many, many ways, right? And this is, part of like the urge is like, it's the logging of the urge, right? It's like, I have an urge, I think it's gonna be, it's gonna kill me. So, I have friends that literally, they'll take out a piece of paper and they'll write down, right now I wanna shop, or right now I wanna have a drink. And they'll say, okay, how long is the urge lasting for? When you have a desire for something, you think it's for forever, right? You do, but it's not for forever. Look at the time, okay? 6:42, fine. Let me just see how long this lasts for. Oh, it only lasts till 6:47. Literally, it lasted 5 minutes. Okay, so okay, it's 5 minutes. And who was I with? Oh, I was with my friend. And that's why we went there. And where were we? Okay, this and that. And how did I respond to it? Well, I started logging it. And then I started talking to my friend about it. And then I started talking about something else. And then I intentionally sent an email. I looked at my phone. I said, there's people I need to respond to. And you write all that down. And then you say, wow, you know what I was able to do? I was able to totally distract myself from whatever was going on. And I literally put myself in a different place. And that's how you deal with an urge. That's all of a sudden how you go into that system 2 thinking. In terms of social pressure and people pressure that very often serve as the trigger for an urge, right? A lot of times people get frustrated, and then that's when they want to do the thing that they don't really want to do. They have the desire to do and they don't want to do it because now they're frustrated and they're nervous, they're anxious, whatever. Know your hula hoop. It's just a great concept. The idea is everyone, in Judaism, we always teach that whatever you can do, and let the rest be up to God. In other words, that God demands we put forth a reasonable effort to accomplish things in order that we're hiding the fact that God is truly involved in our life in every way. But we don't have to put effort into things that I have no control over. Or put it this way, the effort that I put into things that I have no control over are only on otherly worldly, spiritual efforts. Things like prayer, Torah study, mitzvahs, because that's all I can do. If a person gets sick, if God forbid my leg is not feeling well, I can go to the doctor and I can take care of it. If your leg is not feeling well, there's not a lot I can do vis-a-vis the doctor. I can pray for you, I can do mitzvahs for you, I can show compassion to you, I can maybe go shopping for you so you don't have to work your leg, but I can't fix your leg. Only you can go to the doctor, get the MRI, and figure out the proper exercises or perhaps surgery that you need to do to fix your leg. So we call this knowing your hula hoop. Imagine a hula hoop. You got it, right? You put it on your waist, and you're doing your hula hoop, right? That's how you're doing it. It's really great. What is in your hula hoop? Everything that you control. Your actions, your reactions, your thoughts. Yes, you control your thoughts, your emotions. That's your hula hoop. I'm in a situation. Person's yelling at me. I walk in, my boss yells at me. I get all uptight. I want to rip his head off, or I want to quit. Say, wait a second. What's in my hula hoop? How I respond to him. What's not in my hula hoop? Everything else in life. That's in somebody else's hula hoop. And I can't do 2 hula hoops at the same time, especially if there's someone else standing in their hula hoop. It's not going to work. So in their hula hoop is everything else. It's their reactions, their thoughts, their actions, and the weather, and the economy, and what's going on in politics. That's somebody else's hula hoop. Don't get upset about their hula hoop. And understanding, okay, this is my problem. This is something I can affect. And understanding this is something that's someone else's problem. that only they can affect. That is an incredibly calming influence. That brings serenity into a person's life. And say, okay, I realize that vis-a-vis this issue, all I can do is prayer and mitzvahs and show compassion. That's all I can do. But if I know it's inside my hulu, then I can do prayer, mitzvahs, compassion, and acceptance on myself. And then I can go around with any other practical ideas. So those are a few ideas in terms of how to manage the urges, how to manage the social pressure, how to manage the enemies in your life. So my name is Rabbi Wyne. I'm with Inspiring Jews. And please put in the comments of this video in terms of, do you agree? Do you have situations in your life that you've actually used these strategies and they've worked, or maybe they have not worked? And when you do that, other people read those comments and you will end up helping other people. That is something that you can do. That's actually in your hulu, all right? And if you have any questions, send me an email at rabbiyitzwyne@gmail.com. That's RABBIYITZWYNE@gmail. And don't forget, for more incredible Jewish wisdom on how to live a great life, subscribe and follow.